Tapping on Glass, a short horror story. Written by Stories from the Attic, narrated by Robin Mcconnell. When I first told my friends about the knocking, all they did was laugh. Initially, they listened intently, nodding along and straining to hear over the rowdy shouts and clink of glasses in the pub, but as the story went on, something changed. They began, with sly smiles, to share knowing glances across the table, smirking and sighing, one or two tutting loudly, before one of them finally decided to state the obvious by announcing what the rest of them were already thinking. "We've heard this one before, mate." The speaker was Mike, one of my oldest and closest friends. He said the words whilst throwing a handful of peanuts into his mouth and washing it down with a large gulp from his drink, as if trying to stop up his mouth so that no more words would escape. Perhaps, I thought, he felt insensitive about cutting my story off so dismissively, like it was an old joke too often told. Honestly, though, he had no reason to feel bad. Not only was it a fair comment, but it was also precisely what everyone else was thinking. The story was familiar. In fact, I had also heard the story, or at least the version they expected me to tell, many times before. That first night, I could understand the laughter, though of course my story would turn out to be very different, with a far more sinister ending. Far more sinister and, tragically, far more real. In the usual version, in the story they expected me to tell, a man is woken in the night by the persistent sound of knocking, tapping, like the hard rap of knuckles against a solid surface. At first he thinks he's imagining it, but when the rapping continues, he is eventually forced, with an exasperated sigh, to throw back the blankets and leave the comfort of his bed to investigate. "It can't be the front door," he thinks. Why would anyone knock when he clearly had a doorbell? Especially at this hour of the night, or rather, early morning? Padding barefoot along the hall without ever bothering to switch on the light, he hears the sound again and decides to look, despite his earlier assumptions that, yes, it must be the front door. He checks his watch and sees that the time is 3:25 a.m. He approaches the door, ready to swing it open and berate whoever might be calling on him at such a...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?